in the sky, casting long shadows over the sleepy streets of Maplewood. As Emily Carter gripped the steering wheel, her heart racing with excitement. Beside her, Sarah Thompson, her best friend since childhood, laughed, her hair blowing in the wind as they sped down the back roads. The radio blasted their favorite songs, and for a moment, the world felt perfect. "Can you believe we finally made it to senior year?" Sarah exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with joy. "This is going to be the best year ever." Emily smiled, her gaze flickering to Sarah. "Yeah, just think about all the memories we'll make. Prom, graduation, everything." But as they rounded a corner, a sudden flash of headlights pierced the dusk. Emily's heart dropped as she slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching against the asphalt. Time seemed to slow, the horror unfolding in agonizing detail. The other car was too close, the driver oblivious to the impending disaster. "Emily!" Sarah screamed, her voice high with panic, but it was too late. The world faded to black as the sounds of crunching metal and shattering glass echoed in Emily's ears, a cacophony that would haunt her forever. 5 years later, Dr. Marcus Hale stood outside the coma unit, his heart heavy with the weight of lost hopes. He had dedicated his life to saving lives, but the reality of his profession often felt like an uphill battle. The flickering monitors and the soft beeping of heart rates filled the air, a constant reminder of the fragility of life. He had seen too many patients slip away, their families left in despair. As he walked past the rooms, he paused outside one in particular, room 210. The nameplate read Emily Carter. He had followed her case closely, intrigued by her resilience and the mystery surrounding her accident. The heart monitor inside began to beep erratically, pulling him from his thoughts. "Not again," he muttered, rushing into the room. Emily lay there, her face pale and serene, but the sudden spike in her heart rate suggested something was changing. "Come on, Emily," he said softly, leaning closer. "You can do this. Just hold on." With a sharp gasp, Emily's eyes flew open and she was suddenly aware of the sterile smell of antiseptic and the dull beeping of machines surrounding her. Panic surged through her as she struggled to take a deep breath, her chest feeling tight. She blinked, trying to adjust to the bright fluorescent lights above her. Where was she? What had happened? "Emily," Dr. Hale exclaimed, rushing to her side. "You're awake, thank God." She turned her head slowly, her vision still blurry, but the figure before her began to take shape. A man in a white coat, his face etched with concern and relief. Who are you?" She managed to stammer, her voice shaky. "Dr. Marcus Hale," he replied gently, his eyes warm and reassuring. "You've been in a coma for 5 years. We thought we'd lost you." A wave of confusion washed over her. 5 years? I don't remember." "That's okay. Just take your time," he encouraged, his voice steady. "What's the last thing you remember?" Emily closed her eyes, trying to grasp the fragments of her past. "I was driving with Sarah. We were happy." The words tumbled out, but the more she tried to recall, the more elusive the memories became. A shadow flickered in her mind, something just beyond her reach. What happened? Where's Sarah? Dr. Hale's expression darkened momentarily, but he quickly masked it with a smile. "Let's focus on you for now. You're safe here, Emily. We'll figure it all out together." As he spoke, Emily's heart raced. The fear coursing through her was palpable. Had something gone wrong? The memories were like wisps of smoke, slipping through her fingers. She felt a growing sense of dread, as if something loomed just beyond her consciousness, waiting to be unveiled. As Emily settled into the unfamiliar surroundings of her hospital room, the sterile scent of antiseptic mixed with the faint floral notes from a nearby vase of flowers. Dr. Marcus Hale stood by the window, his hands clasped behind his back, watching her as she blinked at the bright fluorescent lights overhead. It was a disorienting sensation, awakening in a place that felt both foreign and eerily familiar. "Emily," he began, his voice steady and warm, "there's something important we need to discuss." He turned to face her, his expression serious yet compassionate. "You've been in a coma for 5 years. Your family has been waiting for you to wake up. They're here, and they want to see you." Emily's heart raced at the mention of her family. "My family," she echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. The memories of her mother's soft laughter and her father's warm embrace floated to the surface, but they felt distant, like echoes from a long-lost dream. "Yes," Dr. Hale replied, moving closer to her bedside. They've been by your side every day, hoping for this moment. It's been incredibly hard on them. He paused, gauging her reaction, then added, "It's also been hard on you. We're here to help you adjust to this new reality." As the doctor spoke, the door to her room creaked open and in walked Laura, Emily's mother. The moment their eyes met, Laura's composure shattered. She rushed to Emily's bedside, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Oh, Emily, my sweet girl," Laura exclaimed, her voice choked with emotion. She grasped Emily's hand, her fingers trembling. "I can't believe you're awake. I've missed you so much." Emily felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to melt into her mother's embrace, to feel that familiar warmth again, but another part felt a deep-rooted resentment. "Why didn't you come earlier? Why did you leave me?" She blurted out, her voice tinged with pain and anger. Laura's face fell and she looked as if she had been struck. I didn't leave you, Emily. I was here every day. I prayed for you," she stammered, her voice trembling. I thought I was losing you for good. I was alone," Emily said, the hurt spilling out of her. "Didn't you care enough to fight for me?" "Of course I did," Laura cried, desperation lacing her voice. "But I didn't know how to reach you, how to bring you back. I felt so helpless." As they exchanged words, the air thickened with unspoken guilt and longing. Emily could see the pain etched on her mother's face, but it was hard to reconcile that with her own feelings of abandonment. The room fell silent, the beeping of the heart monitor a stark reminder of the reality they faced. That night, as the hospital quieted down, Emily was jolted awake from a restless sleep. Shadows danced in her mind, and suddenly she was plunged back into the chaos of her memories. The accident, the screams, a flash of headlights. But deeper than that, there was a figure lurking in the background, a shadow that seemed to loom larger with every recollection. She could almost hear a voice, soft and pleading, but it was drowned out by the roar of confusion that enveloped her. With a gasp, she shot upright in bed, her heart racing. "No, no," she screamed, her voice echoing through the sterile room. The sound of her own panic startled her, and she felt the familiar rush of fear. Dr. Hale, who had been outside, rushed in at the sound of her distress. "Emily, what's happening?" He quickly approached her, concern etched on his brow. "I saw something. I can't remember," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "There was someone in the shadows." "Breathe, Emily. You're safe here," he said, his tone soothing. "Can you tell me more about what you saw?" "I don't know. It's all jumbled," she sobbed, pressing her palms against her temples as if trying to force the memories into clarity. "I need to remember. I have to know what happened." Dr. Hale sat at the edge of her bed, his presence grounding her. "Take your time. We'll get through this together. You're not alone anymore." As she looked into his eyes, Emily realized that, despite the chaos swirling in her mind, there was a flicker of hope. She was determined to face the shadows of her past, no matter how daunting they might be. Dr. Marcus Hale sat across from Emily in the small therapy room, the gentle hum of the fluorescent lights filling the silence between them. He had seen patients emerge from comas with a variety of challenges, but Emily's case was different. Her eyes, still clouded with confusion, held a flicker of something deeper, a yearning to understand. "Let's try to piece together those memories, Emily," he encouraged gently, leaning forward. "What do you remember about the last time you were with Sarah?" Emily's brow furrowed as she concentrated. "We were talking about something important," she whispered, her voice barely above a murmur. "I think I was upset. I can't remember why, but I know it mattered. There was a secret, something we were afraid to tell." "Take your time," Dr. Hale urged, his voice calm and steady. "Secrets can weigh heavily. What were you afraid of?" As she closed her eyes, a flicker of a memory danced just beyond her grasp. "I felt like I was losing her," Emily murmured. "But I don't know why. It feels like a shadow just out of reach." Dr. Hale nodded, encouraging her to breathe deeply. "Sometimes the mind protects us by hiding painful truths, but it's important to confront them, to find closure." Meanwhile, outside the sterile walls of the hospital, Emily grappled with her new reality. Days blended into one another, and the world beyond her room felt foreign. The whispers of nurses and the beeping of machines became her lullabies. But the absence of Sarah was a constant ache in her heart. One afternoon, sitting on the edge of her hospital bed, Emily learned from a nurse that Sarah's family had moved away shortly after her accident. The news hit her like a punch to the gut. "They left," she exclaimed, bewildered. "But why didn't anyone tell me?" The nurse hesitated, her expression softening. It was a difficult time for everyone. Sarah's family needed to heal, just like you. They thought it best to start fresh. Emily felt a wave of isolation wash over her. The one person she had wanted to reconnect with was gone, leaving her to navigate this new world alone. "I don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. I thought I'd get to see her again." With no tangible way to reach out to Sarah, Emily found herself rummaging through her belongings, hoping to find some link to the past. Among the scattered items, she discovered a small, weathered diary. The cover was worn, but the familiar handwriting brought a rush of nostalgia. It was Sarah's. With shaking hands, she opened the diary and began to read. The early entries spoke of their friendship, shared secrets, and dreams for the future. Emily felt tears prick her eyes as she read about the countless adventures they had experienced together. But as she turned the pages, her heart sank. The last few pages were torn out. Why would she tear these out? Emily murmured to herself, her mind racing. What was so important that she wanted to hide? "Emily." Dr. Hale's voice broke through her spiraling thoughts as he entered the room. "What do you have there?" "It's Sarah's diary," Emily replied, her voice thick with emotion. "But the last entries are gone. I need to know what happened." Dr. Hale approached her, glancing at the diary in her hands. "It seems like there are pieces of your past that are still missing," he said softly. "But discovering those pieces takes time and courage. Are you ready to explore those feelings?" Emily nodded, though the fear of what she might uncover lingered in her chest. "I want to remember. I need to." "Then let's take this one step at a time," Dr. Hale said, offering a reassuring smile. "You're not alone in this. We'll work through it together." As Emily sat there, clutching the diary close, she felt a flicker of hope amidst the confusion. Perhaps, just perhaps, the truth wouldn't just bring back her memories of Sarah, but would also guide her toward healing. She took a deep breath, ready to confront whatever shadows lay ahead. Emily sat in her hospital bed, her heart racing. The sterile smell of the room was almost suffocating, but her mind was racing with thoughts of Sarah. She had to know the truth. The memories from that fateful day were still locked away, but fragments began to surface, haunting her like shadows in the dark. With a newfound determination, she decided to confront Sarah's parents, hoping to unlock the truth that had eluded her for so long. "Mrs. Thompson, Mr. Thompson," Emily said, her voice trembling as she faced Sarah's parents in the small visiting room. They looked older, wearier, and the grief etched on their faces was palpable. "I need to understand what happened after the accident." Mr. Thompson, a tall man with weary eyes, exchanged a glance with his wife before he spoke. "It was a difficult time for all of us, Emily. Sarah was deeply affected by everything. She loved you so much, but the burden of what happened, it weighed heavily on her." Tears welled in Emily's eyes. "But I don't remember. Did she blame me? Did I do something that—" "No, sweetheart," Mrs. Thompson interrupted gently, her voice breaking. "She never blamed you. She was just so hurt and confused. We tried to help her, but she was struggling with her own demons." Emily felt a pit of despair in her stomach. "Demons? What do you mean?" Mr. Thompson sighed as if the weight of the world was on his shoulders. "She was dealing with the depression, Emily. The accident magnified her struggles, and it was hard for her to cope. We lost her in more ways than one before the end." Emily's heart sank. She felt a swirl of emotions, guilt, sadness, and an overwhelming desire to understand. "I need to know what happened. I need to remember." Mrs. Thompson reached out, her hand trembling slightly. "We can help you with that. We have some of Sarah's things. Maybe they can trigger a memory, but be careful. Some memories can be painful. Please." Emily pleaded, her voice breaking. "I need to know the truth." After a few moments, they agreed to bring some of Sarah's belongings to Emily's room. As they left, she felt a sense of urgency. The answers were within her reach, and she was determined to find them. Later that day, Emily sat across from Dr. Hale in a therapy session, her heart racing as she recounted her conversation with the Thompsons. "Dr. Hale, I feel like I'm losing my mind. What if I was responsible for Sarah's death? What if I pushed her away somehow?" Dr. Hale leaned forward, his expression one of concern mixed with encouragement. Emily, it's normal to feel that way after such a traumatic experience. But remember, your memories are fragmented. You can't hold yourself responsible for things you don't fully understand. But I can't shake the feeling, Emily insisted, her voice rising. What if I was the reason she was in pain? What if she— Emily, he interrupted gently, you can't assume the worst. You were both young, and you were both dealing with your own challenges. Let's work together to uncover the truth, but don't jump to conclusions. Emily nodded, but doubt lingered in her mind. As she left the session, she felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. She needed answers, but they felt just out of reach, like shadows dancing on the edge of her consciousness. That night, as she lay in bed, the darkness around her seemed to close in. Suddenly, a vivid memory pierced through the fog. She saw herself and Sarah in a heated argument, the words sharp and stinging. You don't understand me, Emily. You never have. Sarah's voice echoed in her mind, filled with frustration and hurt. Why can't you just listen? Emily had shouted back, feeling the anger boil inside her. You're being dramatic. The memory faded as quickly as it had come, leaving Emily breathless with confusion. Why had they fought? What had sparked that anger? As she sat up in bed, her hands trembling, she felt a wave of guilt wash over her. Had she contributed to Sarah's struggles? Dr. Hale, she cried out, her voice echoing in the silent room. I need to talk to you. Moments later, Dr. Hale rushed in, concern etched on his face. Emily, what's wrong? I remember something, she stammered, her mind racing. An argument. I don't know what it means, but it feels important. He nodded, his eyes encouraging. Tell me everything you can remember. As Emily shared her recollections, she felt a mix of hope and dread. The shadows of the past loomed larger, and the weight of her memories threatened to suffocate her. Would she find clarity, or would the truth only deepen her scars? Dr. Hale entered Emily's room, the soft beeping of the heart monitor a steady reminder of her fragile state. He took a moment to observe her. Her skin was pale, her eyes still wide with bewilderment, but there was a glimmer of resilience in her gaze. Emily, he said gently, pulling up a chair beside her bed. I know this is overwhelming. It's important to remember that memories can sometimes be unreliable. They can be influenced by our emotions, fears, and even our dreams. Emily looked at him, her brow furrowed in confusion. But what if I was responsible for the accident? What if I hurt Sarah? The tremor in her voice revealed the weight of guilt she was carrying, a burden that felt insurmountable. Dr. Hale leaned forward, his expression earnest. You were a victim too, Emily. You've been through trauma that would shake even the strongest of us. What I want you to focus on now is healing, both your body and mind. I think a support group might really help you connect with others who have faced similar struggles. You're not alone in this. As he spoke, Emily felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps speaking with others could help her piece together the fragments of her life. I'd like to try, she replied cautiously, still grappling with the fear of facing her past. Later that week, Emily found herself in a small, dimly lit room, the walls lined with chairs arranged in a circle. The atmosphere was thick with shared pain, but also with an unspoken understanding. As she took a seat, she scanned the faces around her. Some were older, others her age, each with their own story etched in their expressions. One by one, they introduced themselves, sharing their experiences with raw vulnerability. When it was Emily's turn, she hesitated, her throat tightening. I'm Emily. I've just woken up from a coma after an accident, and I don't remember much. A young man named Alex, with tousled brown hair and kind eyes, nodded empathetically. That's a brave thing to share, Emily. I've been there, feeling lost and not knowing who you are anymore. It's tough. Their eyes locked, and for the first time since awakening, Emily felt a sense of connection. What happened to you? She asked, intrigued. Alex took a deep breath, his voice steady but tinged with sadness. I lost my brother in an accident. I was supposed to be in the car with him, but I didn't go. I've carried that guilt for a long time. Emily's heart ached for him. I feel like I might have done something wrong too. I can't shake the feeling that I hurt my best friend Sarah in the accident. The group listened intently, and Alex leaned closer. You're not alone in feeling that way. It's common to feel responsible when we lose someone we love, but sometimes we have to forgive ourselves. It's the only way to move forward. As the weeks passed, Emily attended the support group regularly, each session peeling back layers of her pain. The bond with Alex deepened. They shared laughter and tears, their souls intertwined through their shared experiences of loss and guilt. Then one fateful night, Emily was jolted awake by a vivid dream. This time, it wasn't just a shadow, but a memory unfolding before her. She saw Sarah behind the wheel, her face twisted in fear, swerving to avoid a deer that had darted into the road. The chilling sound of metal crunching against metal filled her ears, and Emily felt the rush of adrenaline and panic. As the dream faded, Emily sat up in bed, her heart racing. No, 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 she whispered, realization dawning on her. The shadow she had seen before was not the specter of guilt, but a manifestation of her own fear. Sarah had been driving. It wasn't her fault. Tears streamed down her face as the burden she had carried for so long began to lift. It wasn't me. It wasn't my fault, she murmured, the words empowering her. She felt a profound sense of relief washing over her. With this revelation, Emily knew she had to share what she had uncovered, not just for herself, but for Sarah, to honor her memory and the friendship they had cherished. The path to healing was still long, but with each step, she felt stronger and more resolute, ready to face the truth of her past and the future that lay ahead. Emily stood at the front of the small chapel, the flickering candles casting soft shadows on the faces of those gathered. The air was thick with a sense of reverence, a collective breath held in anticipation. She could see familiar faces among the crowd, friends she hadn't connected with in years, the parents of her late best friend, and even a few classmates from her past. It felt surreal, as if she were watching a scene unfold from a distant memory, yet she was very much a part of this moment. Taking a deep breath, Emily gripped the podium, her palms sweaty against the polished wood. Memories of Sarah flooded her mind, each one a bittersweet reminder of their bond. She recalled laughter shared over ice cream, whispered secrets on sleepovers, and the warmth of friendship that had once felt invincible. But the accident had shattered that world, leaving her in a silence that echoed through the years of her coma. Now standing here, she had a chance to speak, to share, to heal. "Thank you all for being here today," Emily began, her voice steady but soft. "I know these past years have been filled with pain and loss, and today we gather not just to mourn Sarah, but to celebrate her life, her spirit, and the joy she brought to all of us." As she spoke, she could see tears glistening in the eyes of Sarah's parents, their faces etched with grief yet softened by understanding. Emily could feel their pain resonate within her, a shared sorrow that transcended words. "Sarah was more than a friend to me. She was my sister, my confidant. I can't express how much I have missed her. There were so many things I wanted to tell her, so many moments we were supposed to share." The audience remained silent, hanging on to her every word, and Emily felt a wave of courage wash over her. "In my journey after the accident, I've learned that forgiveness is one of the most powerful gifts we can give ourselves. I had to forgive myself for not being able to save her, for not being there when she needed me the most, and I had to forgive life for the unfairness of it all." With each sentence, Emily could see the transformation in the room. Heads nodded in understanding, and a few people wiped away tears. She continued, "What I realized is that Sarah wouldn't want us to dwell in darkness. She would want us to live fully, to love fiercely, and to remember her with joy." As she concluded her speech, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. "Let's carry her spirit with us. Let's honor her by living our lives to the fullest. I believe she would want nothing less." The room erupted in applause, a wave of support that enveloped her like a warm embrace. After the service, Emily was surrounded by Sarah's family. They approached her, their eyes glistening with gratitude. "Thank you for sharing that beautiful tribute to our daughter," Sarah's mother, and said, her voice trembling with emotion. "It means so much to us to hear these memories." "I just wish I could have done more," Emily replied, her voice breaking slightly. "I wish I could have saved her." "Emily," Sarah's father Michael said gently, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder, "it wasn't your fault. You need to believe that. Sarah loved you, and she wouldn't want you to carry this burden alone." As they embraced, Emily felt a sense of closure she hadn't anticipated. It was as if the gaping wound in her heart was slowly stitching itself together, thread by thread. Later that evening, while Sarah's parents were sorting through her things, they discovered a letter tucked away in a small box addressed to Emily. With trembling hands, Anne unfolded it and began to read aloud, her voice quivering. "Dear Emily, if you're reading this, it means I'm not there with you. I want you to know how much you mean to me. You've always been my light, my anchor. Please remember to keep shining, even when it feels dark. I love you always." Tears streamed down everyone's faces as the words hung in the air, filling the space with warmth and love. Emily felt a rush of emotions: relief, sorrow, and an overwhelming sense of connection to Sarah. In that moment, the shadows of the past began to fade, replaced by the light of cherished memories and the promise of healing. As the families came together embracing one another, Emily realized they were not just honoring Sarah's memory. They were forging a new path forward, one filled with love, forgiveness, and the strength to embrace life again, together.